Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I was only 20 years old when my life took an unexpected turn. My girlfriend at the time, Elise, told me she was pregnant. I was gripped by fear. I had no roadmap for fatherhood, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would not repeat the mistakes of my own dad. He had simply vanished, leaving us behind as if we were nothing more than an inconvenience. I swore I would never be that kind of man. So I did the right thing. I married her. Our marriage wasn't built on love, but on a grim determination to survive. I was working full-time and trying to finish my degree at night. We were barely making rent and a sense of confusion hung over me like a cloud. We struggled, living paycheck to paycheck, but we found a way to make it work. We were just two scared kids trying to raise a terrified infant. For 8 long years we held on by a thread. The love between us had disappeared early on, and we both knew it. But I stayed for our son, Leo. He was my entire world. I didn't care how tired I was or how many hours I worked. On my weekends with him, he had my full and undivided attention. No distractions, no excuses. "Dad, can we go back to the lake?" he'd ask, his face lighting up. "You got it, buddy," I'd reply, gently ruffling his hair. "Grab your fishing gear, and don't forget the snacks. Today we're catching the big one." We'd spend our time hiking, fishing, or kicking a soccer ball in the park. Sometimes, we'd simply lie on the grass, watching the clouds drift by and inventing silly stories. I made every moment count because I had vivid memories of growing up without a father. I remembered the empty chair at my birthday parties and my mother's quiet sobs in the next room while I pretended not to hear. I swore my son would never feel that kind of pain. Then, one Friday, everything changed. I came home early because I had left my toolbox and needed it for a job. I opened the front door, keys still in hand, and saw him. A man was sitting at my kitchen table as if he belonged there, shirtless, drinking coffee from one of my mugs. Elise looked at me with a blank expression, as if I were the one trespassing. I just stared at her. "Are you serious, Elise?" She didn't say a word. She didn't even flinch. She just held that same indifferent look. I nodded, my jaw clenched tight. "I get it." I walked out without another sound, driving straight to my friend Dave's place, where I spent the night on his couch. I filed for divorce the next day. I wasn't going to let this ruin the most important part of my life, being Leo's dad. I fought to keep my weekends with him and stayed fully involved. From the start, I made it clear I wanted to co-parent like adults. For a couple of years, it worked. Leo and I were incredibly close. "Dad! Dad!" he'd shout when I arrived, running down the steps with his backpack bouncing behind him. Guess what? I scored a goal in soccer. He adored my family. My mom spoiled him completely. He had friends in my neighborhood. We had our own unique bond, our special connection. He was my little man. I thought that would always be what mattered most. But then she got a new boyfriend. This guy was wealthy. He took them on lavish vacations to Disneyland, on cruises to expensive resorts, all the things I could never afford. At first, I tried to be a good sport. "It's good that he's getting to see the world," I told myself. "As long as he's happy." Then the cancellations began. First, it was once a month. "Hey, sorry," Elise would text. "We're going to Palm Springs this weekend. Leo won't be coming." Then it became more frequent, on birthdays, on holidays, and eventually not at all. My calls went unanswered. My texts were ignored. I called Elise over and over, pleading just to hear his voice. Nothing. 3 agonizing months of complete silence from the boy who had once called me his hero. I was falling apart. My mom, my sister, and even my uncle saw what it was doing to me. They all pitched in to help me hire a lawyer. We sued Elise for parental alienation. I was ready to fight to the bitter end. But the court didn't see it my way. They said he was building stability with his mother. They said I was being disruptive. I lost the case. Worse still, on top of losing my visitation rights, the court increased my child support payments. I stood outside that courtroom, completely shattered. I felt hollow, like the slightest breeze could knock me over. Then her lawyer, the man who had sat across from me in 3 different hearings with a smug grin, stopped me in the hallway. Adjusting his tie, he said in a smooth tone, "Your ex-wife is willing to drop the child support if you agree to give up your paternal rights." I stared at him. "Are you serious?" I asked. He nodded. "This is what both your ex-wife and your son want." That stopped me cold. "What?" I asked. "Leo said that?" He gave a slight shrug, but I could tell he wasn't bluffing. They let me speak to Leo just one more time with both lawyers present. It was one of the darkest days of my life. He sat across from me, stiff and rigid, barely making eye contact. I swallowed hard. "Leo, do you really want me to give up my rights to you?" He looked up, his expression blank. "Yeah." Just like that. His voice was flat and emotionless. I tried to stay calm. "That means I won't be your dad anymore. You won't see me or grandma, or Uncle Sam ever again. You understand? He met my eyes. They were cold, as if he were asking me to pass the salt. Yeah. I felt my whole chest cave in. My hands trembled beneath the table. My stomach twisted in ways I didn't think were possible. He doesn't mean it, I told myself. He's just confused. She's filled his head with lies. But it wasn't just his words. It was the look in his eyes, as if I were a stranger who had just approached him on the street. From that day on, nothing. No phone calls. No emails. Not a single word for 14 years. I almost didn't survive it. I lost the will to pretend I was okay. I started drinking heavily, not just a few beers after work. I'm talking about waking up and immediately reaching for a bottle. I spiraled quickly. I'd go to work smelling of vodka and despair. My friends stopped coming around. One by one, they all disappeared. Couldn't blame them. I was a bitter, angry drunk, clinging to empty bottles and broken memories. My family tried to help. My mom would leave voicemails. My sister would stop by with food. My uncle even offered to pay for rehab. But I pushed them all away. I didn't want help. I wanted to vanish. One night, I drank until I passed out on the couch. I don't remember much of it, just a few flashes. The glow of the television, the bottle slipping from my hand. I didn't even realize I was throwing up until I started choking. Couldn't breathe. My body convulsed and thrashed, trying to save itself. I aspirated. I would have died right there, alone in my living room, if it hadn't been for my neighbor. The mailman had accidentally delivered a package to her door. She came over to bring it to me, saw me through the window, convulsing on the couch, pale and shaking. She called 911. They told me later I was minutes from death. After 2 weeks in the hospital, recovering from aspiration pneumonia, hooked up to machines with tubes down my throat, I couldn't speak. Lying there, breathing through a machine, I realized I didn't want my story to end like this. I didn't want his rejection to be the final chapter. So I moved back to my hometown for a fresh start. It was a quiet town and I got a new job doing maintenance at the high school. I started therapy and joined a gym. For 5 years, I committed myself to rebuilding. I dug through every broken piece of myself, trying to put it back together. It was hell. Therapy cracked me wide open, forcing me to confront things I'd buried since I was a kid. My dad, Elise, Leo, and the fact that my identity had been so wrapped up in being a father that I had no idea who I was without it. But slowly, something shifted. I found peace. I stopped needing answers. I stopped screaming into the void for closure. I just let it all go. And then I met her, my wife, the love of my life. She had an 11-year-old son from a previous relationship. At first, I kept my distance. I was too scared, too broken. I didn't want to get attached to another kid. I didn't think I could survive another loss. But that boy, Cody, broke through my walls. He was kind, smart, funny, and so full of heart. He'd leave little drawings on my desk. "This is us fishing," he'd say proudly, holding it up like a work of art. He'd sit next to me during games, share his popcorn, and ask for help with his homework. Not because he needed it, but because he wanted to spend time with me. "Hey, Adrian," he asked one night, pencil in hand, "do you think black holes could ever swallow the Earth?" I blinked, then chuckled. "Well, I guess it's possible, but not very likely." "What?" he shrugged. "I just want to know if I'll still have to do my math homework tomorrow." He made me laugh for the first time in years. I didn't want to love him, but I couldn't help it. Then on his 18th birthday, he sat me down with a serious look on his face. "I want you to adopt me," he said. I just stared at him. "You want what?" He nodded. "I've been thinking about it for a long time. I want your last name. I want to be your son." I completely lost it, ugly crying. Couldn't even talk. I just hugged him and held on tight as if I were afraid he might disappear. That boy chose me. He didn't have to, but he did. I will never stop being grateful for that. He's in the Marines now, serving his country, and I still text him every morning without fail. Life has moved on. I have 2 younger children now. My son just turned 4, and my daughter is 18 months old. They are my world. Every morning, little feet run into the kitchen, messy hair and sleepy eyes, calling Daddy, like I'm the most important person in the world. My wife is incredible, patient, brilliant, and stronger than anyone I've ever known. She saw me when I couldn't see myself. My career took off too. From the ashes of my old life, I built something real and solid. I created a life I never thought I would have. I became the man I used to dream about being when I was a broken 20-year-old kid with a baby and no idea how to survive. I am a comeback story. I went from a man nobody could love, not even myself, to a husband, a father of 3, and a man with a clear purpose. I survived. About 3 weeks ago, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered out of habit. "Hello," I said, my mind still on my emails. A familiar but aged woman's voice was on the other end. "Adrian, it's Laura, Elisa's sister." My stomach nodded. I hadn't heard that name in 14 years. I didn't say anything. She cleared her throat. I just thought you should know. Elise passed away. I didn't ask how, when, or why. I simply said, okay, and hung up. I felt nothing. There was a blank space where the grief once was. She was a closed chapter in my life. Her and her entire family hadn't been a part of my story in over a decade, and I had no interest in reopening that book. Whatever had happened to her was no longer my responsibility to carry. But life wasn't done throwing punches. On the 4th of July, we were getting ready for a picnic. My wife was packing the cooler. The kids were running around with sparklers and flags, and I was loading the car when I heard a knock at the door. I walked over, wiped my hands on my pants, looked through the glass, and froze. It was him. Leo, my biological son, now 26, was standing on my doorstep like a ghost from a life I had buried. He looked older and taller. He had her eyes, Elisa's eyes. In that instant, my body locked up as if I'd been struck in the chest. I opened the door slowly. He took a small step back, looking unsure. "Hello," he said. "I'm Leo. I'm your son." Without a moment of hesitation, I looked him in the eye and said, "No, you're not. I have 2 sons, and you're not either one of them. Now, please leave my property." His face just cracked. He stood there, stunned, as if he couldn't process what he'd just heard. He must have expected a hug, a reunion, a Hallmark movie moment. But I shut the door. I could still feel him standing there. I didn't have to look. I felt his presence, that weight, as if he were trying to comprehend what had happened. Eventually, he left. I texted my entire family, telling them he had shown up. I told them in no uncertain terms that if anyone made contact with him, I would cut them off permanently. And I wasn't bluffing. I meant every word. It's been 14 years. He made his choice. He looked me in the eyes and walked away. He didn't just reject me, he erased me. He erased all of us, as if we never mattered. My mom died with tears in her eyes, still asking if he ever mentioned her, still hoping he'd come back just to say he remembered. My dad, who finally came back into my life after I hit rock bottom, spent his last years asking if he should have tried harder when I was a kid. My sister, she was my rock. She held my hand through detox and stayed up late on the phone with me while I sobbed in parking lots, too ashamed to go into my own house reeking of liquor and regret. She helped me hire the lawyer. She sent care packages when I moved back home. And her daughters, they used to call Leo cousin. They made him birthday cards and saved him a seat at Christmas until they couldn't. Until they had to learn not to say his name around Grandma because it made her cry. He wasn't just gone. He became a ghost. A ghost we all had to pretend never existed, like tearing pages out of a book and trying to read the story anyway. And now he shows up. Now, because his mother is dead, he wants to claim some kind of emotional inheritance. Some last-minute redemption. No, I won't have it. Just when I thought that door was closed for good, I found out who opened it. My sister, the one who stayed with me through the storm. The one who promised to help me fight. She gave him my number. She told him where I lived. I confronted her. I didn't yell. I just looked at her and asked why. She broke. She just stood there, her eyes welling up with tears. "He called me," she said, "after he came to your house. He said he cried. He said he didn't know how much it had hurt you. He said he wants to make things right." I just shook my head. "You don't get it." She grabbed my arm. "Please, just one meeting. For Mom's sake. For closure." I cut her off. "No. Stop right there, Laura. I don't care. I really don't. If you want to keep talking to him, that's your choice. But if you do, we're done. No birthdays, no holidays, no photos of my kids. Done." She hasn't responded to any of my texts since. My wife, my in-laws, my kids. They're all on my side. They understand. My oldest son, the one who chose me, was furious when he heard what happened. He said, "You're my dad." And he's right. I am a dad, just not his dad. When I told my wife what my kids said, she cried. I think back to all those years ago, how he looked at me as if I didn't matter. No anger, no sadness, just that cold, flat stare. My wife sat beside me on the porch that night, holding my hand while fireworks cracked in the distance, and my kids chased each other through the yard. "You don't owe him forgiveness just because he regrets the life he chose," she said softly. And she's right. That's what this is. Regret. Not love. Not accountability. Just regret. Maybe Elise filled his head with lies. Maybe that boyfriend promised him the world and bought his loyalty with trips and new shoes, and then bailed once she got sick. Maybe now Leo feels lost, adrift without a compass, and he's reaching for something that looks like stability. But I'm not his parachute. I was his father, and he burned that bridge, then he urinated on the ashes. And now, after 14 years, he comes back expecting me to be waiting at the door with a hug and a cold beer. I get it. He was 12. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he was manipulated. But here's what I know. He was 14 when I almost died, choking on my own vomit. That made the news. He could have seen it. He didn't reach out. He was 16 when my mom, his grandmother, died crying for him, still hoping she'd hear from him. He was 20 when my adopted son started calling me dad. That's 6 years of silence right there. He had years to pick up the phone, to write a letter, to send a damn Facebook message. He chose not to. And now that his mother is gone, suddenly I'm the one he wants to reconnect with. Now I'm supposed to be some safe harbor. I don't think so. He made a choice. And therapy taught me something I hold tight. I get to make a choice too. And mine is this: we are done. I have 2 sons. I have a daughter. I have a wife who loves me without condition. I have a family that I fought tooth and nail to build after being shattered into pieces. I have a career I'm proud of. A home I never thought I'd have. A legacy I bled for. And he's not a part of it. I know this sounds cold. I know some of you will say I should forgive him, that people change, that maybe he's really hurting now. And maybe that's all true. But I need to protect the man I've become. I need to protect my family. And most of all, I need to protect the peace. I spent over a decade clawing my way back to peace. It's not a switch you flip or a chapter you skip. It's a slow, brutal crawl out of the dark. Because if you had seen the look in his eyes that day, the day when I asked him, "Do you really want me to give up my rights to you?" And he looked me dead in the face and said, "Yeah," you'd understand. That wasn't a confused kid. That was someone who didn't care. Not about me, not about my family, not about any of it. And I had to learn not to care in return, just to survive. I had to turn the volume all the way down on that voice in my head that used to beg for him to come back. I had to mute the memories, the what-ifs, the guilt, the wondering. I had to bury the part of me that still thought maybe, just maybe, he'd wake up one day and remember who I was. Because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have made it. Now my sister is calling me, crying, saying he's trying, saying he wants to apologize, saying I should just meet him halfway. "He's grown now, Adrian," she said. "He's trying to be a man. You're punishing a grown man for a 12-year-old's mistake." And maybe she believes that. Maybe she truly thinks this is about a boy who didn't know better. But here's what I know. If he hadn't shown up on my doorstep, I would have lived the rest of my life without ever speaking his name again. And I had made peace with that. My sister and my mother, they both lived in hope for years that one day he would just show up. That one day he'd walk through the door and everything would fall back into place. Like a paused movie starting again. They never stopped holding their breath. My sister was 12 when Leo was born. She practically helped raise him, changed his diapers, and stayed up with him when Elise was too tired. She loved that kid like he was her own. She used to carry him around on her hip and call him her little man. He adored her back then. They were inseparable. And my mom, she worshipped the ground he walked on. He was her first grandson, her golden boy. When we walked into her house, she'd have his favorite snacks waiting on the counter and would clear her whole day just to be with him. He was royalty in her eyes. So when he disappeared from our lives, it shattered her. She couldn't understand it. No matter how many times I tried to explain what had happened. How he looked me in the eyes and said, "Yeah," like I meant nothing. It didn't compute for her. Her heart just couldn't accept it. She died with that pain still lodged deep in her chest, never understanding why he abandoned us like that. So yeah, I get why my sister is clinging to this fantasy. She wants to believe that now, after all this time, we'll reunite. That we'll hug and cry and magically become one big happy family again. But I think she's blinded by that hope, by that delusion. I don't blame her. I really don't. But I also can't go along with it. And I 100% agree with what many of you are saying. We are strangers now. That man who stood on my porch on the 4th of July, that's not my son. I don't know him, and this won't end with a quick talk or some tidy moment of closure. He'll want more. He'll want to meet his siblings. He'll want to be part of the life I've built, the life I've bled for. But here's the thing. I don't let strangers around my kids. Period. Some people have asked how he even found me. Well, apparently Elise, before she passed, still kept in touch with my sister. And after she died, my ex-sister-in-law reached out and asked if my sister wanted to connect with Leo. Why? For what purpose? I have no idea. My sister tried to explain her side, but I cut her off because honestly, I don't care. I know that probably sounds cold, even awful, but giving up and not caring is how I survived. I buried that chapter for a reason. For the longest time, I wanted to believe it was all manipulation. That maybe he was just a pawn in Elise's game. That maybe he was too young to know better. But that story doesn't hold up anymore. Because the truth is, I always told him I loved him. Always. I showed him I cared. I was present. In 4 years of joint custody, I never missed a weekend. Not once. I was late for pickup twice and called ahead both times. Elise never paid for a babysitter because either I or someone from my family was always there. I went to every school event, every parent-teacher conference. I was listed as his primary emergency contact until the very end. I called him 3 to 4 times a week. Every week. We had our routines, our life. And then one day he just stopped answering. He told the school it was his mother's decision. Then later he said that he didn't want to visit. He made that choice. Not at 5 years old, at 12. And maybe 12 isn't old enough to grasp the full weight of a decision like that. But it was old enough to look me in the eyes and rip my heart out. So yeah, I get why people want to believe the narrative where he was a confused kid, a victim of circumstance. I get why that's the story they want to believe. I wish I could buy into that, but the truth is, I just don't have the heart to care anymore. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.